Welcome back to the Mountain and Adventure Film Festival. I'm Benjamin Oberman, and today I'm here with Morgan Cardiff, who has two films in the festival. He has The Penguin Runner, and he also has landmark American Prairie Reserve. So we're speaking with Morgan, who's actually in Munich, finishing up a master's not in film, but in science. So welcome, Morgan. How are you today?
Thank you very much. I'm very good. Thanks for having me.
Excellent. So let's start out with it. You're a scientist, so where did film come into the mix?
So it kind of started with The Penguin Runner, to tell you the truth. So I met Dave Chamberlain back in 2012. He was my diving instructor in Nicaragua, actually, and he was talking about doing these runs, and one of them was going to be the length of Argentina. And he basically did that, and then I'd moved to Munich. I moved to Germany, and he called me up and he said, "Morgs, if I can get a car in Namibia for you, can you come down and shoot some photos for me?" So I didn't have a job. I was like, yeah, I'll go do that. And jumped in the car, jumped in on a flight and got down to Namibia, and then went and met him in the middle of the desert. And I did one interview with him, and I didn't know him very well. I knew kind of what he was about. And he just came across so articulate and so interesting. And I found what he was doing super interesting. And I filmed with him for about 5 weeks, and then got back to Germany and went, oh, what do I do with all this footage that I have? Turned to YouTube and basically learned how to edit, and Penguin Runner was born. So
did you have experience with cameras before, or did you just pick up whatever home video camera you could find and go?
So I'd done some photography before, but nothing with film. And I basically just Googled some real basic stuff that I thought I might need to know, and went from there. And that's how I've ended up here today.
Well, that's awesome. It's actually not so different than my journey. Like the very first feature I produced, I bought a book called How to Produce A to Z. And people would be like, so what are we doing next? I'm like, I'm not to that chapter, but by tomorrow I'll know.
Exactly. It's a good learning process, and there's so many resources out there available to anyone who wants to look and wants to find them. So you just need a good story, you need a good subject.
Absolutely. So that's my next question with the Penguin Runner. Like, he did this incredible run, but for it to actually build awareness and have an effect, there's got to be a crap load of PR. So how did you guys get the word out there about what he did? And where did the film? Were you releasing real-time footage, or was this just something he quietly did, hoping that it would bring awareness after the fact?
Yeah, so I'd say that marketing is not Dave's forte. Dave is good at doing what Dave does, which is running ridiculous amounts of kilometers or miles on his own, under his own steam. And I don't know, it was never really a pre-thought when we were going into it. I mean, he had a website established. He was doing it. He was basically running the land equivalent of the former range of the African penguin to raise awareness for the penguin. In hindsight, running through the desert to raise awareness for a penguin is probably not an ideal situation. And a lot of people were interested why he was there and what he was doing. And I guess you're a guy pushing a stroller through the middle of a 110 degree desert. People kind of stop and ask you what you're doing. So just through that way, he sort of got a lot of communication out there. And then as he got into South Africa and he got closer to the coast, then it became kind of more penguin orientated. So I could only stay with him for 5 weeks, and that's what we captured with that. And so beyond that, I think it just by him doing what he was doing started getting the awareness out there for the issue that he was trying to raise money for.
Well, that's great. And so after you spent a month in the 110-degree desert heat, you thought, I think I'll go up to the American Prairie Reserve and suffer through mass amounts of mosquitoes. So what was that transition like?
Yeah, so I then started a master's degree, and I was looking for something to do for a few months over the summer. And I guess my interest is in conservation photography and filmmaking, and I was looking at ways to kind of combine those aspects. And I saw through Adventures in Scientists for Conservation, who I've been following for a couple of years. I think I've seen this film by Alexandra Bombash a few years ago, called Move Shaker. And so I was following Greg, and they were looking for volunteers. And I'm like, well, that's a perfect opportunity to shoot some photographs, get out there and experience something different. And then put a little piece together, and that's kind of just, I thought I'd tell the story about what we did out there.
Well, that's good. And, I do see we've got a few viewers tuning in. So forgive me if it's not clearly apparent, but there should be a way that you can type in questions you may have through the Q&A function on the YouTube page. So at any point, please feel free to ask questions of us, and I'll feed them to Morgan. That way we can get them answered. But staying with American Prairie Reserve, what was that experience like? It's absolutely spectacular, but it's very different. Like, there's no mountains, there's no seas. Like, it's its own unique, very unique geography.
Sure. So I rocked up on day one, and it was about 110 degrees, and I set my tent up, and I looked around, and I went, "Oh man, I'm going to spend 8 weeks here. Wow, this is going to be tough." And honestly, by the end of it, I didn't want to leave. I was even through the mosquito plague, which I'm sure you'll ask me about in a moment, but it just is it's a landscape that really grows on you, and it's not as barren as it seems, and there's just so much more to it than you first appear and you first think of. And from my photography style, it's kind of like a bit of a minimalistic type sort of approach, and it's just perfect. I couldn't have asked for anything better. And there's the Little Rocky Mountains, which is about 50 miles, I guess, from APR, which is beautiful, and you can climb up to the top, and you've got views all the way to the south, down to the Missouri River. Just the summertime storms that come across that place are just incredible. And yeah, I was lucky enough this year to be able to go back and experience the winter, which I'm actually probably a bit more of a fan of the winter out there. It's a special place. It's a really, really cool place to visit and to do work in.
And why is the preservation of the prairie so important to conservation?
So basically, there's no real major government protected areas for grasslands in North America. Or there's the US. There's a few sort of smaller places, but mainly it's through these private protected areas that a lot of the rangelands conservation happens. So by securing these big places of rangelands, it goes a long way to protecting grasslands and keeping them in grasslands. So I've actually just been out there again, actually talking to ranchers about the process of conservation on rangelands as well. So it's this landmark film has actually helped me with my science masters and my conservation background as well. So it's good.
Well, that's good. I think it comes back that more and more everybody's discovering the power of film as a medium to create an emotional response and a connection with people who won't physically get a chance to go there. So I think that what you're doing is really great. So along the way, there's other people out there. So what's the experience like? Do you all bond? Because obviously you don't really know each other, but you all have a common interest. What kind of an experience is it for people who would actually want to go out there and volunteer?
Yeah, I mean, it's fantastic. Anyone who's out there has an interest in conservation and outdoors. And so immediately there's a bond there that exists between the volunteers that are out there doing this stuff. And yeah, I'm not sure how many people at the moment. I think it's 6 or 5 or something are going out there every 2 months or something. And I don't know, it's almost like having instant friends that have the exact same mindset as you do, because they wouldn't be out there if they didn't. And I mean, you see them in Landmark, they're interesting people, they're funny people. It was a pleasure to spend time with them, actually.
And between the two films, because you obviously had two very diverse experiences, did one resonate more with you or stick with you more than the other?
I think they both have. I mean, Dave Chamberlain has literally changed my life, and he's going to laugh if he ever sees that. But without him providing this platform for me to make these films, I wouldn't have done what I've done. And it's now leading on to other things, and I'm doing some stuff professionally in this film sort of documentary genre. And then for the American Prairie Reserve and Adventurers and Scientists for Conservation, if I hadn't have gone and volunteered with those guys, it wouldn't have led me to be doing my master's thesis in a topic that's basically looking at the social dynamics and that around grassland conservation. So just two totally different experiences, but I don't know, it's complete and it's whole, and it's bringing everything together. So it's I'm like incredibly stoked.
Wow. Well, that's good. And when you were filming Dave, did you run alongside him at all, or were you always on a bicycle or in a car, or how did that work?
I think I ran about 3 kilometers with him one day. But I had a car, I had a 4-wheel drive basically that I was with him, and we would just basically camp on the side of the road wherever we stopped. And a couple of times we got taken in and given free hotel rooms. One night we spent a night in the game warden's backyard of it's called the Namibra Nature Reserve, which again is really similar to APR. It's a private protected conservation area in the south of Namibia. And I mean, we woke up and there was 100 zebras 50 meters away from us drinking at a water hole, and just experiences like that. It was pretty awesome.
And did you stay focused on the project, or with your camera did you shoot pictures like of the leopards drinking and pick up things that captured your attention as well?
Did I just say leopards? I meant zebras. Sorry.
That's still exciting too, but I mean, leopards would be a little bit more hard to find.
If I saw 100 leopards, my heart would. Oof. Anyway, so I was taking random pictures. Sometimes during the middle of the day, I would go off and see the local sites. If we were running through something that I knew was interesting, and there I would go and spend the day doing that, and then come back to him. There's only a certain amount of footage you can capture of someone running alongside of the road, so you kind of got to look for other things to shoot. Yeah,
well, and it's a good thing it wasn't leopards, because they would probably outrun you.
Possibly. I don't dare say that's the truth.
Well, that's cool. And along the way, like, he was pushing a baby pram. Like, did people ever stop thinking that there was maybe a baby in there and that this was some weird homeless guy that shouldn't be there?
Yeah, so I believe he got a question one day about how irresponsible it was to be pushing a child through the desert where he was, but he quickly smoothed that over. He's just, I'll talk about him for a second, because it's in terms of like what he's capable of doing, and he will hate me for saying this, because his whole premise about what he does is to try and show people that anything's possible. Like, they can, if they want to go and do a project, they can just, it's just a mindset thing. It's just not being scared of it and just having a go at it and seeing what happens. But the guy he was doing 50 Ks a day in 46-degree weather, day after day after day. And I started to get a bit complacent about it, because I would get there and say, okay, Dave, so the next point can we try and get to is here, and it's 55 Ks away. Can you do that today? And he's just like, yeah, sure. And I kind of forget that 55 Ks is incredible. So it kind of makes me a bit complacent about it at the same time. But yeah, sorry, I've lost track of where the actual question was.
No, I mean, that is interesting, and it's an interesting point. Like, so how many days, he was essentially running more than a marathon every single day through the desert. How many days did that go for?
Ooh, I think it took him about 3.5 months, if I believe correctly. But yeah, the time that I was...
He possibly did close to 100 marathons.
Yep. And I mean, later on, it's not in your festival, but West of the Sea, he did 8,100 kilometers in 5 months and 1 day. And that's averaging, I think, about 46 Ks a day over the 5 months.
Wow.
Sorry, I'm talking kilometers.
So I've got a question here from Taylor Say. We know you endured harsh weather, so how well did your equipment endure the trip? Technology doesn't always cooperate when we need it to. Any major technical roadblocks?
So I shot both of those on a Nikon D800, not a film camera. The Nikon stuff is just, in terms of like DSLRs, in terms of hardiness, just withstand anything. Dust, dirt, wind, rain. I think we even had some snow there one morning really early. I left it out overnight to shoot time lapses, and it just powered on through. I think the cold is the main issue. As long as you've got something you can clean the dust off your lenses and out of your body, that's okay. But it's shooting in the cold that you need to watch batteries, and if you're using an iPhone, say for example, for a screen, anything below -10 or even -5, it stops working. So you need to consider things like that.
Now, what do you mean by you were able to attach your iPhone to the camera as an external monitor?
So there's a couple of there's some some hardware from DJ, I think DJI, I think it's called, a little Osmo, and it's almost like a little handheld gimbal that's super small with almost like a GoPro camera attached to it. And basically that there you can attach your iPhone to it and use your iPhone as a screen and use that piece of equipment. So I didn't actually have that for the landmark shoot, but I've used them in the past. But then with that, the limiting factor is the cold. You can't basically use it in the cold. But yeah, the Nikon stuff smashed through both of those experiences with no problems.
Excellent. Did the mosquitoes find the cameras interesting too? Did they like land on the lens and cloud up your view?
It was actually more of an audio issue because you would hear them humming and buzzing, and they would come in and hit the lens and then go off and things like that. So in terms of taking photographs, yeah, they were okay, but there was always a little constant buzz.
So people always talk about like odorless garlic, brewer's yeast, citronella candles. When you're truly in that mask, does anything make a difference other than just dealing with it?
Nothing at all. So we were trying to burn bison dung. We were trying to do everything possible, and even to the point of loading up with spray, and it's still, I don't like using spray to start with, but it still did nothing. We had days when we were hiking and literally the wind was blowing from, say, the south, and we'd have no mosquitoes on the south facing side of us, and they'd be all on the north facing side. You would slap your hand and they would disappear for 3 seconds, and then they're all back on you. But in saying that, it's such a small portion of the time that I spent out there. Actually, it's not. It was 2 weeks, but it's. I don't think back to the experience that I had on APR and think to the mosquitoes. Yeah, it's just one aspect of the overall landscape and the overall experience that we had. What sticks in my mind is just those summertime storms and just that beautiful, just vast landscape, huge open spaces, and yeah, the night skies. It was incredible.
Well, and a technical question for photography, like with storms, because I always see those really awesome shots where the sky is lit up with lightning. Is that something that you can set your camera to do automatically, or do you just sit there and try to shoot the second that you see the sky light up?
Okay, so what I would do is basically sit there and do 10-second exposure after exposure after exposure. If you do any longer than, say, 15 to 30 seconds, you start to get movement in the stars, so I try and avoid that. So yeah, if you can just continually do 10-second exposures, you'll get something eventually. And I know there's other ways to do it, but that's just the way that I would do it. Open the aperture right up and do those.
Yeah, and with the clarity, because you don't have light pollution or cities or anything. What's the night sky like? Is it pretty incredible to start watching?
The night sky is incredible. I mean, you're 100 miles from the nearest town, and that town's only 4,000 people. It's incredible. I mean, we got the Northern Lights in August, which is incredibly rare for that time of year. And I mean, if you're into night astronomy photography, it's a spectacular place to go and hang out.
And if somebody wants to go there, how do they get there?
So you basically have to go from Bozeman or Billings north, about, I think it's probably 4 hours from Billings, up towards a little tiny town called Malta. And then you basically, about 50 miles before you get to that town, you need to take it right. And you drive on a dirt road for about an hour. And then you'll find yourself in the American Prairie Reserve.
Excellent. So we've got another question. This is from Rachel. You've worked in a lot of beautiful and extreme environments. Are there any locations you're looking to work in the future? Anything that inspires you? So
I know it's a bit hot topic at the moment, but Iceland. Living in Europe, I always said that I wanted to go to Iceland before I went back to Australia, and that's something that's on the cards. I'm not going to give too much away now, but I've got another project with Dave that is in the pipeline at the moment. But I'm just going to keep my mouth shut on that one for now, I think. So yeah, I mean, Iceland, and for me, anywhere the more remote, the better. There's other parts of Africa. I'd love to go back to Namibia actually and spend some more time there. It's really a spectacular place for a photographer to go and visit.
When you're traveling through some of these remote regions and you encounter villages or locals, how do you communicate? Is language a barrier? Because I'm going to guess that a lot of them probably don't speak English.
For me, it hasn't really been a big part of what we've done. So southern Namibia is incredibly sparse. There's not a lot of people there in the first place. And with Dave speaks Afrikaans, so he sort of chats away and I just sort of sit back. And then, I mean, with the Canada project, obviously that's no issue. I've shot some other stuff in Southern Africa where I've been shooting someone who didn't speak English, and I just make sure I have someone there that can translate, that can tell me what's going on. I had the same situation in Sri Lanka, and I basically hired a fixer for the day who drove me around and took me to these places and acted as the translator for the interviews. It's difficult, but it's not impossible.
Okay. Well, good. Well, thank you so much. Unless there's any other questions, I want to say definitely if people haven't seen it yet, go to the Mountain Adventure Film Festival. It's at filmfestivalflix.com or mountainandadventurefilm.com. Both will get you there. And watch the Penguin Runner and Landmark American Prairie Reserve. And Morgan, what's the name of your most recent film that's not in this year's festival, but people should look out for?
It's called West to the Sea. And it's available for free at the moment if anyone wants to have a look. If it's through the Fort William Film Festival, you can check it out. All
right. Well, that's it. That's excellent. And vote for Morgan. Thank you so much for your time. And if you missed this interview, within the next day it'll be cut and put up on YouTube and on Facebook, so that if you have further questions, please type your questions in the comment box on Facebook, and Morgan will get to him as long as he's not in some remote region with no cell reception.
No problem. I'd just like to add that Adventurers and Scientists for Conservation provide this incredible platform for people to get out there and experience some pretty awesome stuff, such as the time that I spent on the American Prairie Reserve. So yeah, Greg and the team over there at ASC, it's a really, really awesome thing they've got going on, and I see a lot of good, really big future in it, and a lot of benefits coming out of it. So, and especially as a young scientist as well, being able to combine these two passions of adventure and media filmmaking, it's really cool.
Absolutely, and the founder and executive director is a guy named Greg Trainish, and that's Adventurers and Scientists for Conservation, and I believe their website is adventurescience.org. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think that's right. Yep.
Yep. So look it up. They have tons of projects all over the world. You can go to remote locations, and you can even get involved and do some work, right in your own backyard. So it's a great organization. And again, Morgan, thank you so much, and it's great to have you be a part of the festival.
No, thank you for providing the platform for it. It's fantastic.
All right. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in and watching, and for the great questions. I hope you join us again. We'll actually, in about an hour and a half, we'll be talking with mountaineer Adrian Ballinger about his 2015 expedition to Ski Makalu, which is the world's 5th highest peak in the Himalayas. So join us at noon Pacific time, and we'll talk to you soon.